So often when you're using formulas, you run into a situation where you want to use some conditional logic. You want to say, if this is true, then do this. Otherwise, do this. In Airtable, we can handle that conditional logic by using an if statement. If you're here, maybe you're trying out if statements for the first time, or maybe you've used them in other programs and you just need a refresher for Airtable. If you're experienced with conditional logic, I snuck in some cool tips for you as well, including a new statement called switch that is ideal for situations where you have a lot of possible outcomes, and also some cool tips on how to make your formulas shorter. All right, let's build it. I've got an example list here. This is a list of basketball players on the Boston Celtics in the year 2009 and some stats. To tell you the truth, I'm not a big sports guy, so I kept these stats pretty simple. We've got a salary. I actually gave them some attitude ratings. I don't know these guys. I did recognize a couple names, so don't take this personally if you're one of them. And then their ages and the number of games they played that season. So to set this up for using conditional logic, the first thing I want to do is to make a simple calculation. I want to know how much money each player was paid per game that they played. So I'm going to open up a new field and we'll call this salary per game. And this is going to be a formula. And we'll just take the salary and then divide it by the number of games. And when I create this field, well, the first thing that I see is that we don't have dollars here. So let's convert that to currency. And now that we're looking at it, we've got an infinity here. We've got all these zeros, which probably aren't zeros. It's probably just that I don't actually know what their salary was. So it's kind of misleading for this to be a zero, probably better for it to be blank. So what I want to see ideally is I'd like this to be blank because infinity isn't a thing. That's just because I'm missing the number of games for Brian. And then I also want these to be blank as well. So let's tackle the salary discrepancy first. So I want these to be blank. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this back up again. And I am going to put a space here so we can see this. And then I'm going to type if. And that pulls up our if statement here. And you can see that an if statement, the way it's set up is that we have a logical comparison. So this is going to be the way that we compare the salary to the outcome that we want. And then based on that statement, there's the first value, which is the value that will output if the comparison is true. So for our example, if the salary is more than 0, it's going to show value 1 because that is the true statement. And then if that statement is false, so if it's blank, or if the value is less than 0, or if it is 0, then it'll show the value 2, that second value. So what I'm going to put here is I will put if salary is greater than 0, then we want to do salary divided by games. Otherwise, we are going to use this blank function, which makes the output blank. So then we'll close our if statement here, hit save, and that worked. So now we've got all blanks here. But I've got this infinity up here too, and I want that to go away as well. So I'm going to go back in here, and I'm going to use an and statement. So and is just going to take multiple arguments here, and then the if statement will look and see if both of those are true. So we've got and salary is greater than 0, and the games are greater than 0. Close that off. And so now what this is saying is if salary is greater than 0 and games are greater than 0, then we'll do this. Otherwise, we'll leave it blank. All right, so, and that worked. There's our infinity is gone. So we achieved the outcome that we wanted for this field. But there's actually a more efficient way to write the formula, and I want to show you that now. So if we open this back up again, I want to talk a little bit about the if statements again, because what this is doing, if we look at it again, if comparison, value if true, value if false. So when the program or when Airtable outputs true or false, that's when this triggers. And I actually know from experience of trying this out that if something is blank, if I just put that thing in here, right, salary, I don't even need to put a comparison because a blank value is going to output false. So I can get rid of these two little comparisons here. And all I need to say is if salary and games are present, right, are not blank, then do this. Otherwise, leave it blank. So I'm going to hit save here, and that worked. Same outcome. The last thing I can do is if I go back in here, this value if false. So our last thing here, we've got our comparison, then our value if true, then our value if false. The value if false is optional. And so I can actually go in here and delete this. And now all I'm saying is if salary and games are not blank, output salary and games. Otherwise, nothing. I don't have to even put it here. So I'm going to hit save. Same outcome. So that just saves us a little bit of time, makes things a little simpler. Let's reinforce that real quick with another example. So for this example, I just want to see whether the players make more than $100,000 or less than $100,000 per game. So I'm going to open up a new formula here, and we'll call it more than 100K. This is a formula. And we're going to say if the salary per game is greater than 100,000, then we want to output a green circle emoji. Otherwise, we'll output a red circle emoji. And this, I like to use this for all kinds of different statuses. This is just a nice clean way to show the output of an if statement. So any text used in an if statement needs to be enclosed in quotations, and emojis count as text. Numbers are not inside quotations. So if you're comparing numbers, or if you're comparing something to numbers, or if you're outputting numbers, you put the numbers without quotations. But if you are comparing text, so if you want to see one piece of text is equal to, or it matches another piece of text, or if you're going to output text, it needs to be inside quotations. So let's close this off, create field. And now we can easily see who's making more than $100,000 per game. We can group by that. Great. Next, let's tackle nested if statements. Okay, so we've got the basic if statement down. One thing that comes up often, however, is that you have multiple conditions or you have multiple different outcomes that are that you want to make your if statement based on. So for example, we have some players who are making many millions of dollars, and we have some who don't even make $1 million, and when we have some in between. So I would like to make a salary brackets formula. And what I'm going to say is if they make less than $1 million, I want to say not $1 million for our salary bracket. If they make between $1 and $2 million, then we'll say $1 million. And if they make more than 2 million, we'll say many millions. So how are we going to set that up? Let's create a formula here. We'll call this salary brackets. Create a formula. And then, so we'll type our first if statement here. And this first if is going to say if the salary is less than 1 million, then we're going to say not $1 million. But then instead of giving a second output here, we're going to put another if statement here, because basically what we're saying is if the salary is less than 1 million, say it's not $1 million. But if it's not less than $1 million, then I want you to compare another if statement. So in this one, we're going to say if the salary is less than 2 million. So for this one, we want the outcome to be $1 million, because we already know that it's not less than a million because we've already ruled that out, right? We already put an output based on that. So it's not this, which means it's anything above a million. And so this next output, we want to say if the salary is greater than 2 million, or is, oh yeah, I said greater. We're going to say less. So if the salary is less than 2 million, then we're going to output a million. And then because we only have one more option, we know we could keep going, but for this example, we have only one more option. So now we're going to just put out many millions here because we know that we've already ruled out the other options. So then if I close this off, we've got our nested if statement. All right, the last thing I want to show you is a switch statement. So if statements are by far the most common kind of conditional logic we might use in Airtable, but we also have this other function that we can use called switch. Switch is really good for times when you have a lot of possible outcomes. For example, I have this list of attitudes here. So some of our players have a great attitude, some have an exceptional attitude, some are negative, some are neutral, etc. And I want to give them bonuses based on how happy they've been making the rest of their teammates. And so I'm going to create a switch statement that basically gives them a bonus based on this single select field, right? So I want the people with an exceptional attitude to get $1,000. With a great attitude, they'll get 500. Neutral, they'll get nothing. And we're going to find the people with bad attitudes. So here I'm going to call this attitude bonus. It's a formula. And so now we're going to start writing switch. And so the way the switch function works is that we are going to pass it an expression. And so this is going to be the thing that we compare against. And it's important to know that switch does not work exactly like if. So if we are, like we did in the nested if we actually need to compare numbers against each other, switch will not work for that in the same way. We can't have multiple outcomes, say like if it's greater than 500, do this. If it's greater than 1,000, do this. It's more for matching. So we can say if it's great, right? If the single select is great, do this. If it's exceptional, do this. And so that's what I'm going to do here. So I am going to put attitude as our expression here, comma, and this is where I can list any number of pairs I want, a match and then an outcome. So for example, great, $500, exceptional, $1,000. So let's put these in here. So let's start with exceptional. And so we're going to pair exceptional with 1,000. And then we'll do great for 500. And we'll just go down the list like that. Just to make this a little bit easier to read, I can actually drag this down. By the way, fun fact, the fact that you can drag this down is a Chrome specific feature. I just saw this on someone else's video the other day, and my mind was blown because I use Safari most of the time, and now I use Chrome just because of that. So we've got our expression here, and then we've got our comparison pairs. So I'm just going to put these out like this so it's really easy to see. And then in switch, we also can put an option at the end for a default. So if there are no matches, you can put a default here, but it's optional. Just like in the if statement, we had the last variable be optional. And I'm not going to put one because I've got a single select field. I'm always going to choose one. And so since we're not going to put that last one in, we don't need a comma after the last number there. I'm just going to close this off and create the field. And now we can see that we've got all these outputs. Let's make it a currency field. And we've got our proper bonus outcomes based on attitude. So that's how we employ logic in Airtable using if and switch statements. And I just want to tell you that logic, what you just learned here, is one of the 3 tenets of software design. So we've got data, logic, and interface are the 3 different things that make up an application, right? That make up a piece of software. And many of us, maybe including you, just started using Airtable because it's a great upgrade to a spreadsheet. But you might also know that the more lofty goal for Airtable is to democratize software creation. And this logic is getting us one step closer to that. The interface designer obviously adds the graphical elements that completes the cycle. So congratulations, you're one step closer to becoming a software developer. If you like this video, make sure to check out these similar videos here, and make sure to help other Airtable learners find this video by hitting like or subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching.